Raiders offense, the 3 X factors who could change everything in 2026. 3 names. 3 positions. And if even one of them breaks out, the entire outlook for the Las Vegas Raiders offense flips upside down in 2026. Because here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud, this isn't about the guys you already expect to be great. This is about the wild cards. The maybes. The players who could either save this offense or sink it right back into the same dumpster fire we've been watching for years. Before we get into it, if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe, because this breakdown is about to get heated. Now let's set the table. When most fans picture what they want from this Raiders offense, certain names jump out immediately. Brock Bowers, Ashton Jeanty, Tyler Linderbaum, Kolton Miller. Those guys are locks. We already know who they are and what they're capable of. This isn't a video about them. This is a video about the players who live in that gray area, the ones we're hoping show up, but honestly have no guarantee. And if these 3 specific names actually deliver on their potential this season, it's not an exaggeration to say the entire offensive identity of this football team changes. So let's start with the most polarizing name on this list, and I already know some of you are rolling your eyes. It's Kirk Cousins. Yeah, I said it. And honestly, nobody should be shocked that Cousins is the headline of this conversation, because his impact on this roster cuts both ways. If Cousins goes out and plays well, this offense has a legitimate, competent starting quarterback for the first time in what feels like forever. If he struggles, we're staring down a full-blown quarterback controversy, because sitting right behind him is Fernando Mendoza, the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. A lot of the fanbase is already itching to see the rookie under center, but every report out of the building, every word from the coaching staff, points toward Mendoza sitting and developing for his entire first season. So if Cousins falters, are we ready to watch Aiden O'Connell take snaps again instead? Here's the thing that should make you feel better about the Cousins pickup, though. The most honest answer in this entire breakdown is that Kirk Cousins gives this team a real, functioning quarterback. Think about what that actually means after the quarterback carousel this franchise has endured. If Mendoza stays glued to the bench all season, that's not a bad sign, that's actually the loudest signal possible that the Raiders are winning football games and Cousins doesn't need to be pulled. And it's not blind faith either. Cousins closed out last season on an absolute heater over his final 4 starts, 7 touchdown passes and, more importantly, 4 wins with 0 losses. Those weren't garbage time stats against bottom feeders either. That's the number that matters most to me as a fan, wins. 4 for 4. Now, quick rhetorical question for you, how bad does a quarterback room have to get before serviceable starts to sound like a luxury? Because let's be honest about the names this fanbase has had to sit through over the last several years: Gardner Minshew, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jarrett Stidham, Brian Hoyer, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder. If you told any die-hard Raiders fan they had to watch one more of those arms trot out there in 2026, there'd be riots in the parking lot. Kirk Cousins might finally, give this team something resembling stability at the position. And if it's not him carrying the load, it'll be Mendoza stepping in, so either way, the offense has a real shot at moving forward. Zoom out and look at how far this offense has fallen over the last 3 seasons. And to be clear, I wasn't against moving on from Derek Carr, I wanted this team to actually compete for playoff wins. But the aftermath has somehow been worse. It hasn't been about talent as much as it's been about decision-making at the top. You had one coaching staff pushing their own guy into the building. You had a front office trying to nickel-and-dime the position with bargain bin veterans. And most recently, you had a quarterback who cashed a big check and then, by most accounts, checked out mentally. A team with a legitimately good, professional presence at quarterback, on and off the field, can be the single biggest swing factor for this offense's ceiling. Let's move to candidate number 2, because this is a player who's going to determine whether this passing attack has any teeth outside of the tight end room. It's wide receiver Jalen Nailor. There's a reason the front office went and got him, and I've said this all off-season, hats off to this organization for actually building a coherent plan and following through on it. Think about the timing. Nailor signed on day one of free agency. That's not a depth move. That's a signal of exactly how much value this new coaching staff and front office place on him. 3 years, $35 million. And with Trey Tucker heading into the final year of his current deal, it's fair to read the tea leaves here. The people running this franchise clearly view Nailor as a bigger long-term piece of this passing game than Tucker. Now don't get it twisted, Tucker's a good receiver, and he proved that last season by stepping up as the team's leading pass catcher. But if you asked me which receiver on this roster has the tools to blow past 1,000 receiving yards in a single season, my answer isn't Tucker. It isn't Jack Beck either. It's Nailor. I remember exactly how Minnesota's fanbase reacted when word broke that the Raiders were signing him away. And look, I get the skepticism, his box score numbers haven't been eye-popping. Across his time in Minnesota, he's only cracked 400 receiving yards in a couple of seasons, and the overall volume just hasn't been there. But here's the context that gets lost: he was buried behind Justin Jefferson on that depth chart, stuck as basically the third option in an offense that didn't need him to be the guy. Even in that limited role, he still managed to find the end zone plenty, racking up double-digit touchdowns across his final 2 seasons up there. Now imagine unleashing that big play ability as a legitimate second or even primary target, running routes behind Brock Bowers instead of behind a Hall of Fame caliber receiver who was hogging targets. The fact that this front office made Nailor a priority, not an afterthought, a priority, tells you everything about how they view this passing attack. Every analyst, every national outlet, has hammered the same talking point for months: the Raiders need a true number 1 receiver. If Nailor turns into exactly that, this offense doesn't just improve, it transforms. So here's my question of the day, and I genuinely want to hear your take down in the comments: between Kirk Cousins, Jalen Nailor, and Michael Mayer, which one of these 3 X factors do you think has the highest chance of actually breaking out this season, and which one do you think busts? Drop your answer below, because I have a feeling this comments section is about to get spicy. Alright, let's move on to candidate number 3, and this one's a little more under the radar: tight end Michael Mayer. Following the same logic as the Nailor breakdown, everyone keeps screaming that the Raiders need a true WR1. Except, functionally, they already have one. His name is Brock Bowers, and he's already playing like one of the best tight ends in the entire NFL. So if Bowers is essentially locked in as the number 1 target regardless of what position he's listed at, the real need becomes, who's the second tight end who can hold up in a 2 tight end look? That's exactly the role Mayer is built to fill, and it matters more than casual fans might realize in this specific offensive scheme. The new offensive coordinator system leans heavily into 12 personnel, 2 tight ends on the field at once, and that usage rate was already sitting around 30% of offensive snaps last season under the previous staff. With Mayer entering a contract year, fully healthy, and motivated to cash in, the timing lines up perfectly. Going back to when he came out of Notre Dame, Mayer was a legitimate first-round talent in a lot of draft evaluators' eyes, myself included. He could catch the ball at a high level, and just as importantly, he showed real ability as a blocker in college. And in this scheme specifically, if you can block, you get on the field, it's that simple. If Mayer proves he can hold up at the point of attack, the targets and opportunities will follow. He's obviously going to live in Bowers' shadow because Bowers is the best at his position in the league and the long-term face of this offense. But even a modest breakout, something in the range of 50 catches, 500+ yards, and 6 or 7 touchdowns, would be enormous for the overall balance of this attack. Think back to some of the most dangerous 2 tight end systems in recent NFL history, teams that paired an elite pass-catching tight end with a physical blocking complement to create matchup nightmares. That's the blueprint this coaching staff is clearly chasing, pairing a dominant ground game behind Ashton Jeanty with heavy play action out of those 2 tight end sets. When the run game hums, everything downstream of it, the passing lanes, the play-action shots, the whole rhythm of the offense, gets easier. But none of it works if the group up front can't hold their ground, which brings us to the piece that ties this entire conversation together. Because here's a question worth sitting with: does any of this matter if the offensive line can't block anybody? Ashton Jeanty can't be Ashton Jeanty if he's getting hit before he reaches the line of scrimmage. Brock Bowers can't be Brock Bowers if his quarterback is running for his life. Kirk Cousins can't be Kirk Cousins if he's flat on his back every third snap. And no scheme, no matter how brilliant on paper, means anything if the trenches are losing every single down. That's why the hire of veteran offensive line coach Rick Dennison, replacing the outgoing staff member, might genuinely be the most important move this front office made all offseason, and that's saying something, considering how aggressive and calculated this offseason has been across the roster. Because let's revisit exactly how disastrous the offensive line was last year. The Raiders allowed 64 sacks, dead last in the entire NFL. Their pressure rate on a per dropback basis also ranked dead last. Jeanty, despite flashing real talent as a runner, posted some of the worst efficiency numbers of any running back in football, largely because the overwhelming majority of his yardage came only after absorbing contact behind or right at the line, a brutal, grinding way to try to manufacture offense. As a team, the Raiders finished dead last in the league in yards per carry and near the bottom in total rushing yards per game. That's not a talent problem. That's a trench problem. So if this offense is going to take the leap that so many fans are hoping for, it starts up front. Rick Dennison has to get that offensive line playing to the level this roster's talent actually deserves. If the blocking holds up, then everything else clicks into place. Cousins gets time to operate, Jeanty gets room to create instead of absorbing hits at the line, and the passing game built around Nailor and Mayer finally has room to breathe. Put it all together and here's where this offense could realistically land. If Cousins delivers steady, competent quarterback play, Mendoza stays exactly where the coaching staff wants him, patiently developing on the sideline, and that alone represents years of losing football finally starting to turn a corner. If Nailor and Mayer both have genuine breakout seasons, this offense stops being one-dimensional and turns into a real, balanced attack that defenses actually have to respect. And if the offensive line, led by Dennison, finally holds up its end of the bargain, the entire supporting cast gets the room they need to actually perform. 3 names. 3 variables. And if even 2 out of these 3 break the right direction, this Raiders offense doesn't just improve incrementally, it fundamentally changes. So drop your prediction in the comments, tell me which of these breakouts you're buying and which one you're not, and I'll see you in the next one. Into a real, balanced attack that defenses actually have to respect. And if the offensive line, led by Dennison, finally holds up its end of the bargain, the entire supporting cast gets the room they need to actually perform. 3 names. 3 variables. And if even 2 out of these 3 break the right direction, this Raiders offense doesn't just improve incrementally, it fundamentally changes. So drop your prediction in the comments, tell me which of these breakouts you're buying and which one you're not, and I'll see you in the next one.